Hey everyone, so continuing with our explanations of talking about how populations fluctuate, I wanted us to look a little bit here at predator and prey relationships between each other. So just as a quick warning, this slideshow does have pictures of animals eating other animals. It's not particularly gruesome, but I just wanted to give a short warning in case anybody needs kind of a warning about that. So, when we're talking about the way that these populations fluctuate, they're affected by their interactions with each other. So, again, when we think of predator and prey being locked together, connected in a food web, that's the reason why one population will have such a big impact on the other. So, we can see here with our example, we've got a wolf and a game bird here. So, as numbers from one population increase or decrease, they can cause another to increase or decrease if they are connected in the food web. So there's a few different ways that this can occur. So we can think of it both from the perspective of how predator populations fluctuate and how the prey populations fluctuate. So if we think about predator populations, so if the population of wolves increases, chances are the first thing that's going to happen with our prey population of birds here is they are going to start decreasing. The more predators there are and the higher the demand there is for prey, it's going to have a heavy impact on that population and cause it to drop. On the other hand, if the population of wolves starts to decrease, the amount of predators being lower in the environment actually makes it to where prey species are going to jump up a bit. Fewer predators to take out their numbers means that they have more of a chance to up their numbers. But likewise, prey populations can also affect predators. So if our population of birds starts to go down, our population of predators, the wolves, will also start to go down. As there's less food available, their numbers are going to start to decline because one of their big food sources has been cut off. And if the population of prey, our birds, goes up, the wolf population is also going to go up because the more food that there is that's available, the more likely that the wolves will be able to reproduce and have the energy they need for rearing cubs. So again, those numbers are going to go up as well. So again, they're very connected to one another. The other thing to consider is when these numbers stay stable. If the population of the predators or the prey happens to stay stable, they're breeding at a pretty consistent level, they're not getting too much higher or too much lower, then the other population is also going to stay stable. Wolf population stays stable, bird population stays stable. Bird population stays stable, wolf population stays stable. So again, they're connected to each other in that way. So we're going to go through a few examples, and what I want you to do is pause the video and consider what happens with with one population. We're going to talk about one either changing or staying the same, and then talking about what will happen to the other population that's connected to it. And with each one, you need to think about which one's the predator here, which one's the prey. So should be pretty obvious from who's eating who, but we'll try and point it out. Okay, so this first example we have here is if the population of rats goes down, what happens to the population of owls? Again, think about how those two would affect one another. For this one, we're talking about if the population of tigers goes up, what happens to the population of wild boars? And again, we're not seeing a full wild boar here, but that is a big prey source for tigers in some colder parts of Asia. So again, you can pause at each one of these to consider each one of these scenarios and how the population is affected. If the population of cicadas, so that's our insect here with the wings, you probably hear them making that zzz in the summertime in the middle of the hot day. If the population of cicadas goes up, what happens to the population of praying mantises? Again, you see a mantis here disguised on the tree eating our cicada here. If the population of deer stays the same, what happens to the population of wolves? Go ahead and think about that one. If the population of humpback whales goes down, what happens to the population of krill? And you can't see the krill in this picture. Krill are really, really tiny. They almost look like shrimp, but they're little crustaceans that live inside of the water. And lots of large creatures like whales will actually eat them. So in this case, the whale is the predator, the krill is the prey. That's why they've got these special teeth called baleen that helps them kind of sift it through the water like a strainer. If the population of spiders goes down, what happens to the population of flies? And some of you out there might be keenly looking at this and saying, oh, that's a granddaddy longlegs. And you may already know that a granddaddy longlegs is not technically a spider, even though they are very closely related. But again, just for the sake of this example, if the population of spiders goes down, the predator, what happens to the population of flies, the prey? If the population of lizards goes up, what happens to the population of secretary birds? Predatory bird loves eating reptiles. If the population of geckos stays the same, what happens to the population of dragonflies? Go ahead and think about that one. And then finally, if the population of humans goes up, what happens to the population of quail? So think about that one. So again, I hope that this kind of helped. Again, this is a pretty straightforward lesson talking about how predator and prey are connected to one another. But again, when we're talking about populations, this is one of the things that we have to consider. Again, obviously they're connected in a bigger food web, so there are other food sources available, but having a trusted food source like this can still really impact these populations. So think about how these things will impact.